Hello all sentient beings and welcome to Transmissions Alt Mode, where we talk about all news, comics, and media related to the... On this special episode of Transmissions Alt Mode, Daryl and Jeremy talk with Matt Moylan. He was part of Dreamwave working on their Transformers comic in the early 2000s. He is also the creator of the Little Formers webcomic and currently the director of publishing at Udon Entertainment. So hang on tight. We're about to start this special episode of Transmissions Alt Mode.
Hello and welcome to another Transmissions Alt Mode Extra. Tonight we're going to do a fun little interview and travel back a decade or two and talk to a member of Dreamwave Publications. Most people know this gentleman as the creator of Little Formers. He's also the director of publishing at Udon Entertainment, but he was also part of Dreamwave back in the day. Tonight, we're going to have a chat with Matt Moylan. How are you, Matt?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, I can't believe we've taken this long to actually have you on the show.
Well, better late than never.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that those Dreamwave 2005 comics are not going to be coming out. Still late, but maybe we'll get them finished soon.
Well, we're only going to talk about, because we just finished talking about Volume 1, so we're not really there at the ones that kind of, we try not to talk about the ones that just didn't come out, but we're going to talk about the ones that finished, the storyline that finished. So,
Yeah, back when Dreamwave was on top of the world. And
literally, the comics world.
No, that was a crazy time, dude. The first 6 issues that Dreamwave published were all number 1 on the sales charts, except for one issue which was beaten by Armada number 1 when that launched.
If you're gonna be beaten, do it yourself.
That's right. That's crazy.
And that was when the sales charts actually meant a lot of books.
Yeah, I mean most comics didn't. Maybe sometimes comics had 2 covers. I mean, all the Dreamwave comics had 2 covers, but now with so many multiple variants and so many incentive covers, so comic shops are ordering extra copies of things that they just maybe throw away after or just sit in boxes forever. I mean, you never know how many people are actually buying the comics anymore.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, when did you start with IDW? Or IDW? Sorry, I have DW written in my note. When did you start with Dreamwave? Like you were early on, I think.
Well, I was basically right when Dreamwave became a publisher. Dreamwave was under Image Comics for a couple of years, published through them, and then once they got the Transformers license, they went independent. And just as they're doing that, I got an internship at Dreamwave. So the first 4 months of 2002, I was an intern. And then in April of 2002 is when Transformers G1 number 1 came out, the first Dreamwave Transformers issue. Well, they had like a little preview issue before that. But, I was just finishing my internship as the first issue came out.
Oh, nice. And what did you do in your internship?
I was like an assistant web developer and graphics guy at the beginning.
It's not really on the books themselves.
But I did stuff. I don't know. I changed quickly. I became, I was web guy. Then I was the web guy. Then graphic designer. Then I after a year, I told Pat Lee and Roger Lee, I think there should be a whole design, graphics, trade paperback posters department, and I think I should be in charge of it. And they're like, okay. so basically, I got put in charge of everything that wasn't on the books, that wasn't writing and drawing. So art, not art and writing. So I was in charge of the lettering, in charge of setting up the covers, doing the ads, doing catalog ads, doing posters, calendars, all kinds of stuff.
Well, I mean, those posters and calendars, I think they did well too. I remember in the early 2000s, they were everywhere.
Oh yeah, man. Those, especially the 2 single characters, the Optimus and Megatron ones.
Yeah, I mean, you still see those today on things.
Yeah, they still use them all kinds of merchandising. Hasbro is smart enough to get all the assets like every month. Like send us everything every month.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So in those first issues, you didn't have much of an hands on them,
No.
but
Well, on the very first issue, I did like a half-page ad for Dreamwave's upcoming convention appearances, and I misspelled San Diego in it.
Oops.
There's 2 D's of San Diego. I don't know. I've never been there at that time.
They have beaches. Well, but you were credited starting, I think, in issue 3 with edits by, and you actually gave us a comment. I think it was on issue 4 about, was it the Red Alert?
Why Red Alert appeared? Yeah. So edits at that time meant they put me in charge of like look up, like research and figure out where all the Autobot and Decepticon logos go, put them on the characters because the artist didn't draw them in most of the time. Or things like that, or just double check and look for like, just because I knew a lot about Transformers at the time, I'd notice like, Grimlock's eyes are the wrong color or something like that. Just look for stuff like that and just change it if it's easy. But yeah, the thing I told you guys was issue 4. Red Alert just shows up. He's suddenly there, and he hasn't been in any other scenes yet. And it's because Pat accidentally drew Sideswipe with the Autobots in
Canada.
on Prime's group, in Canada, and then also fighting Devastator in San Francisco. Yeah. So rather than redraw it, I recolored one of them to be Red Alert, and then I took the Red Alert from the issue number 5 or 6 cover. I think it's number 6. Yeah, I took it from the number 6 cover, and then I put him in behind all the other Autobots when they show up with like the antivirus guns. I just edited them in the background.
Yeah.
And then I also changed some of the lettering where I think it was a Wheeljack, or he said like there's the 7 of us can handle this, something like that. So I just edited in the 8 of us can handle.
It's nice that there was the beginning to be the era where a lot of stuff was digital. So I'm sure that made it easier.
Yeah.
That's funny though. Thanks for Hasbro doing so many like repaints and recolors.
Yeah, they're the only toy line that can get away with it.
Yeah,
it's such a complaint. Like even when I don't know, last 10 years I collected the Masters of the Universe He-Man figures, the classics figures, and they'll take any chance to do a repaint or just a slime pit He-Man, like another like copy of. But if it was Transformers, it'd just be like they just give him a new name and it's a new toy.
New name, just paste a new color on them, and when we were going over these, the credits on these books seem to be like some of the longest that we've ever seen on like a non-anthology book. What was it like working with that many people on like single books?
Well, it's a weird how that series went. I know there's a lot of colorists. So the first issue had only one colorist, Pierre Theriault, and he quit after the first issue and went to work in video games.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
I'm sure he did well for himself.
Yeah. So then the series mostly. I think. Well, Pierre, he's working. I think he's working at Ubisoft now. So he did well, I think. Yeah. But after that, it got taken over by I think mostly 3 guys, Gary Young and Alan Wang and Ramel Sunga, and they're like Dreamwave's 3-star colorists, and they work really well together, and they can match each other.
Yeah.
So they work together. But then at the end, when it was getting really late, Pat was just like banging out pages to try to catch up. So they brought in every colorist they knew.
Yeah. I think reading it after the fact, I think I forgot that some of them were so late. Yeah. But
the art was always also broken down a lot more than an average American comic is.
They kind of followed flats and
they kind of followed a more Japanese style of like get the main guy to do as little as possible so that he can do more. Right. So Pat actually just drew the robots and the humans, and the backgrounds would always be drawn by Edwin. That was like the whole time, all 3 years I worked at Dreamwave, Edwin drew all of Pat's backgrounds. Flats are like if anybody doesn't know, are like the kind of Archie Comics colors. You just pick the colors and fill them in, and it's really just it's grunt work. It doesn't take a lot of artistic skill. It takes skill to be a flatter. You get faster and faster and you can do more, but it saves the main colors a lot of time. So they just the flatter also became like the researcher to figure out, make sure they put the right colors on all the transformers and stuff.
Yeah, I think we've talked with some colorists and they've mentioned when like they're in a time crunch, they have friends help with flats. So
yeah.
Well,
but yeah, it was a crazy time. I mean, when that first issue hit, it was just nuts because the only other comic that had it was not the first nostalgia comic. There was the G.I. Joe comics just before that, but this was and they were pretty big. I think they were really successful at the beginning, but Transformers was just huge.
It was
like there was the big store in Toronto. They're still around. They were a little different back then, but was Silver Snail. And they're known for doing elaborate like window displays. Like for the Watchmen movie, they had like a life-size Rorschach, and they made an alley with crumpled up newspapers blowing by, all kinds of stuff. Like they do that kind of thing. Or they'll put like, here's every Star Wars figure for the last 10 years or something like that. Yeah. But for this, they just put up, it was just like an easel, and they just cut up 2 copies of the issue and just pasted the issue in the window. And
wow.
And just had people come in the store.
It was the perfect time for that wave of nostalgia. Like those of us that were finally kind of making our own money and able to to buy the toys that our parents had given away after we had moved out and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's basically once you have disposable income, you want to buy back your childhood.
Yeah,
for sure.
So,
plus this was like, not everybody remembers right away. Like when you if you watch an old Thundercats episode and you haven't watched it since you were a kid,
mm-hmm.
you might be like, oh, that's a little cheesier than I remember. but this comic was the attitude of it was kind of, oh, that's the coolness I remember, even though it was maybe
it's the
cool,
Transformers you remember, not the Transformers actually was.
Yeah.
I'm currently going through G1 rewatch with my 5-year-old, like his first time, and yeah, I know some of these episodes are going to be a pain to get through.
So was there any discussion on like within the offices there while the books were coming out that, stuff that ended up being, the fandom kind of latched onto stuff like, all the faces look the same, and other things like that, some stuff that Charles would probably know a lot more about if he had showed up for the interview today.
I remember that kind of stuff like while I was at Dreamwave. I don't know necessarily during that first series that I remember much of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There was this. It might have been there, but there was just so much hype and so many people just saying it was great and amazing.
Yeah.
Because it's visually, it was such a step up in terms of like rendering versus like the last Transformers comics were like the G2 comics, and they were still pretty flat.
Yeah.
And
it was on the old paper, and Dreamwave used the newer smooth paper.
Yeah. So it just seemed just way fancier. And it seemed like, I don't know, just that era of comics, at least to me, like it felt like when I was buying, say, the Cliffhanger comics by like Joe Madureira and Roberto Ramos, J. Scott Campbell, where like every panel is just like amazing. Every time a new character pops up, like, oh my gosh, it's a panel of Grimlock. Wow, I haven't seen Grimlock in forever. Amazing. Okay. And you're like just happy to have seen him even,
Yeah. What about the because one thing I remember about picking it up at the time was that this was all produced in Canada, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, holy crap, there's a Transformers comic and it's produced in Canada and it's printed in Canada, right? It actually said down at the bottom, printed in Canada, right? So can you walk us through like where you guys were kind of situated? I think it was in Markham, but where was all the printing done, right?
Well, I have to think, but I would guess it. So printing is probably some form of the company that we still work with. Like Udon works with a company called Marquis in Quebec. And they were, I remember now. Okay, so Marquis is sort of a spin-off separated company of a bigger company called Quebecor. And that's who Dreamwave worked at the time, Quebecor. And Quebecor is not just a printing company, but I think they're like a big media company. They own TV and things like that.
Oh yeah.
So they, not sure what they still do for printing, but I'm sure they do something, but they might have a different name now. But like even today, DC Comics prints up until this recent worldwide event. DC Comics printed all their comics in Quebec as well.
Really? I didn't even know that. I thought everything was done overseas and shipped over.
No, not for comics. I mean, we've looked into it, and the savings is minimal for this kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. Plus, there's just not time to do it. Like you get, so when you solicit comics in the Diamond catalog, which is the catalog everybody uses to order their comics, you basically have from the time the retailers make their orders to the time the comic has to be out is sometimes as little as like a month. So you don't have the orders until like a month before the book's supposed to come out. Yeah. So you just don't have time to print it overseas. The local printers can turn it around and get it from like you send them the files to being on the shelf in like 3 weeks. So everybody for floppy comics, unless you're just willing to take a guess of how much you're going to need, you got to print them here and print them either in Canada or in the US.
Mm-hmm. All right.
But it was pretty cool. I mean, the original Dreamwave office, was in at the north end of Markham, and we were there for the first year of Transformers comics. I think they were there a little bit before that, doing their own original comics. But yeah, for 2002, that's where Dreamwave was, and then we moved offices after the first series was so successful at the beginning of 2003 to a much bigger, fancier office on the edge of Richmond Hill and Markham. It was on, highway. I don't, if you know Toronto highway, there's a Highway 7 separates those two suburbs. So
I know it.
Yeah.
I don't.
So on the north, so we're exactly on the north side of the highway, like on the highway.
Cool.
But that was one of Dreamwave's downfalls, was moving offices, though. They moved from a $2,000 rent a month office to a $20,000 a month office.
That's like the .com bubble. A lot of companies did the same thing. They started getting money and just waste it.
Yeah, we needed a new office, but we needed just like a twice the size office, not this giant mega office that they renovated and kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Canada, Yoshi did want me to ask if you knew what the deal was with Canadian tanks.
I looked that up because of that. And I don't know for sure about 2002, but right now Canada has 82 tanks and 600 infantry fighting vehicles, which I don't know what the difference is, but if you saw one come down the street, you'd be like, oh my gosh, a tank. So we've got some things. I don't know if we'd have 3 of them in the Northwest Territories. I mean, it's not much up there.
Yeah, well, you got to protect yourself from the Alaska invasion.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
The amphibious vehicles are built here in London, so that's those 4-wheeled or 8-wheeled, I guess. They're built here in London, and they're shipped all over the world. So yeah, I see them all around the city driving around test driving. So yeah, they're menacing.
I had a brother-in-law who used to work on I think he was painting them, military vehicles that are made in London.
Yeah,
they're American military vehicles, though, right?
Yeah, well, they build them for Saudi, and they build them for all whoever orders them, whoever has the dollar bills, man. They'll build
amphibious vehicles to go to Saudi Arabia.
Yes, they do.
I guess they got oceans, but
yes, they do. Yeah, but so no, there's that. But 83 tanks. That's that's a good sized military we got there. I guess we could line them all up on the border and have almost I don't know, maybe 11 per province.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Daryl, do you have anything else in the Dreamwave era? 'Cause I know you had some like more modern questions you wanted to ask.
No, go ahead if you've got some more Dreamwave stuff.
No, I'm done. I think with that. I mean, since we are only 6 issues in to the Dreamwave era.
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot. I mean, Matt, do you have any kind of like other cool? Because you mentioned the thing about Red Alert. Do you remember anything else going on that maybe we might not know about? Anything coming up as well?
Well, there's all kinds of things. There's so actually in the next G1 series, Ratchet, he wasn't really in this one. He was like unconscious. He's in a couple panels in this first series, but he's in the next one. And around this time, it was not actually to do with Ratchet, but he was affected by it. So Hasbro in the Armada line had a Red Alert figure who was kind of an emergency vehicle. He was like blue and white.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So they put a red cross on the side of that toy, and the Red Cross organization, took legal action against them, saying, like, no, you can't put that on there, which is kind of important, Like they control their logo so that people know when you're in like a combat zone or something. That's like the real Red Cross.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
They don't want to get that diluted.
Yeah. So they told Hasbro like no red crosses on any toys. So like, okay. So they stopped doing that. When they made the next Red Alert repaint, he's like orange and white. It said like emergency rescue or something instead. But there's an issue of the Dreamwave comic volume 2 where Red Alert showed up, and we knew about this, so we reversed his shoulders to be a white cross on a red background versus his initial design. But in I don't remember what issue, maybe 2 or 3, it got missed and it got printed, and it got noticed before it got shipped out, but they're already printed. And I remember we asked Hasbro, can we is it okay if this goes out? And they're like, nope, no way. So they destroyed the whole print run of an issue and reprinted it. So that was rough.
A few got out, right? A few got out, and they're worth a shit ton.
Well, if you ever find one, there might have been a few saved by the printer, and maybe they sent some out, and maybe some people at the Dreamwave office had a few, but we'll see. If you ever see one, that might be worth something.
Yeah. I remember that was an issue with, was it the Masterpiece Ratchet, or no?
Masterpiece Ratchet does come with a cross, but he's got 4 squares in each corner. And for myself, I just cut the 4 corners out and just put them on there.
Yeah, they made it where you can just make the cross yourself.
Yeah.
That's clever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of little things like there's an issue of I think it was changed to Energon by this point. It was either Energon or Armada. I think it's Energon. Where Optimus Prime, he gets zapped, I think, and you see like his, I don't remember what exactly was happening. Maybe he was getting changed into Energon Optimus. But anyway, there's like a big panel where he's all covered in energy, and you can see all of his insides, like all of his schematics and stuff, all his parts inside. And Don Figueroa was drawing this issue, and he drew 2 little balls at his crotch, like
nice. Oh, that's fantastic!
like spheres. And
Michael Bay.
And yeah, and we noticed that in the office, and we asked. I don't remember if we had him change it or someone in the office change it, but we changed them to cylinders just to not be that. Didn't want to get in trouble with Hasbro later, but the original art has that in it.
Wow!
If someone owns it.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, I'm sure if he sold that actual page, someone was a happy fan.
Yeah. Oh, I got something else. I really like that you guys got this, that in the first G1 miniseries that Wheeljack dies at the end, right? So I mean, it seems obvious to me, but it's not stated that he dies, but Superior and clearly dies, and they kind of have a parallel thing happening there. And that's how it was written, that he dies, but the follow-up writer just chose to ignore that. Didn't say like he's, we figure a way to bring back. Nope, that never happened. I didn't want that to happen, so he's still around.
The last panel has Jazz cradling Wheeljack's body. That seems pretty clear.
I remember seeing some pages, the first page where Wheeljack shows up in the next series, and I was like, "Oh crud, they made a mistake. I'm gonna go make sure that doesn't happen, and they're gonna be really happy that I noticed that." And I brought it in and said, "You guys screwed up Wheeljack. Remember he died in the first series?" And the writer just said, "Wheeljack didn't die." Like, no, he didn't die.
It's like the Duke in G.I. Joe the movie.
Well, at least that they did change. In the thing, in the actual thing that was released.
Just with a voiceover. But.
Yeah. He's in a coma. That's that snake in the chest put him in a coma. Okay. Well, do you remember there's another line later on in the G.I. Joe movie where Duke's not around. There's just somebody just says, Duke's going to be okay.
Yeah, at the very end.
So, as I mentioned in the intro, you are pretty high up the ladder at Udon. So how does a guy go from, essentially just correcting edits and doing edits at Dreamwave to being one of the head honchos over at Udon? I mean, you're not just you got lots of people getting coffee for you now, man.
Oh, I wish. Everybody at Udon is like in different parts of the world, so not a lot of us working together, especially now. But I don't know. The thing I tell people about moving up is just be willing to try any job. Mm-hmm. Like, can you lay out a cover? Like, probably try it out. Or can you manage this little project? We're really swamped. Sure, I can try managing a little project. And you'll just keep picking up new skills and trying out new things. Mm-hmm. I went so at Dreamwave, I started as an intern, became a web guy, graphics guy, ran the post-production department. And at the end, I was managing some projects. Like I managed the Transformers Armada, More Than Meets the Eye Encyclopedia. I managed the second one, the Energon Encyclopedia that never got released.
No.
So
not your fault.
Yeah. So I managed that, and some other things. But then after Dreamwave closed, I did some random freelance stuff. And then after about a year, I got a job at Udon writing press releases. At first, it was actually just rewriting the press releases. Eric Koh, who owns Udon, would write them, and English is his second language, so they wouldn't be perfect. So he just say, go over this and fix it up. But to writing press stuff, becoming the whole marketing person, then becoming a project manager and graphics guy, and eventually just being in charge of all publishing. Which is kind of, it's not that there wasn't, the guy who did this before me was Eric himself. Just Udon just grew and grew until he needed more people to do all the stuff that he used to do.
It's a good situation to be in, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so now we do. We still do occasional comics, but are for Street Fighter and related stuff like Darkstalkers or Rival Schools, things like that. But our main thing we do is publishing video game art books, publishing or anime art books. Some of them are translated from Japanese books, but some of them are original ones we assemble ourselves from scratch. We also translate manga, do some original graphic novels. Right now we're running an Indiegogo campaign for Random Views, which is a graphic novel about an interdimensional package delivery service.
That's cool.
Yeah, so they might be delivered. They might not even know what they're delivering. They have a tendency to accidentally cause a lot of explosions, things like that. So it's a really fun, wacky series by Jeffrey Chamba Cruz. Chamba is like his nickname. Just go to any of the Udon social medias, like Udon Ent on Twitter, and you can find out more about it. We talk about it all the time since we're running the campaign right now.
Cool. Yeah, we'll also get the URL and put it in the show notes.
Cool.
Link to that for sure. And the other thing that, like I said, most people probably know you from is from your Little Formers. And and I first found you at a TFCon back in 2012, just sketching away. And you and I have had a annual relationship doing sketch covers every year. But you've been doing Little Formers for a really long time. And thing I didn't really, find out until, relatively recently, maybe a couple of years ago, is that you completely shifted your art style from, I don't know, more comic book esque to the chibi style, which is what you use for Little Formers. And when did that happen? And how did you just decide one day that I got to go, whole hog into this, Little Former style and just stick with it? And, what was the story behind Little Formers?
Well, I mean, yeah, I used to draw before that, but I didn't have any professional credits or anything. I just drew superheroes that I liked, like X-Men and things like that. And while I was at Dreamwave, I think I pitched a couple times, like, we should do a Transformers comedy series, and I would love to write it, and I don't know who would draw it. I thought maybe Matt Nelson, who's another chibi Transformers artist. He had some comics published in the Dreamwave comics, and they just never. I never got the pitch past that, like the idea. They didn't decide it was something to move forward with. But then after Dreamwave shut down, I just had all this Transformers knowledge stuck in my head. Just had to come out somewhere. So I decided I'll just try. The first one was not really meant to be a comic. I just drew a shockwave and I added a speech balloon and I posted it on TFW on the website. It was a shockwave going like pew pew. I'll conquer Cybertron with my super sweet sound effects. And people like that. They'd say like, "Oh, draw a Warpath, draw I don't know, a Brawn." And so I just started drawing more and adding speech balloons, and eventually like, "Oh, I got like a dozen of these. I'll make it a website and just do them regularly." So yeah, I don't know. I just decided to draw like the art style. I just decided to draw a chibi Shockwave because I thought it would be fun. And then I kept drawing them after that.
You've got it down though. I mean, the style that you do it in is it's concise. It works. And yeah, man, it works for everything too. I mean, like, you and I have done almost, I think will be 9 or 10 covers.
Is that many? Oh my God.
It's ridiculous. Right. And yeah, so it's a lot of covers, probably 9 this year. And yeah, I don't think I've had you draw a Transformer yet. Well, actually this year will be one, but they're all different. They're all, superheroes and such. And your style works for everything. Yeah. So, I've been really impressed by it.
Yeah. I got you to do a Superman a few years ago, and it's great.
Mm-hmm. Those sketch covers, some of them are really fun, like really nice to draw, and some of them are really hard to draw. The paper change, even in the same company, the paper changes all the time. Like is one of yours, Daryl, the Wolverine? Like, is that one of yours? Yeah. So that one was really bad paper, whatever it was. So I'm drawing it and like, this is so rough. It's getting all smudgy. So I tried to make it crazy, like a Bill Sienkiewicz cover, kind of a little bit, just because it's getting messy anyway. So, but I remember that one was really hard to draw on the cover, but I don't know what it is.
It seems like they always use the sketch covers to kind of experiment with their paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think the first few you really liked, and it's older paper, and I still have a few of those covers left. So maybe I'll work with you with those in the next few years. Send those back to you.
I've gotten to know, like, to try it out as I'm going. Okay, this is what this cover is going to be like. So I just have to be careful. So I think most artists are like that. They know to be very careful when they start drawing it before they know because you never know what that paper is going to be like. Yeah, sketching at conventions is almost the only time that I draw on paper. So most of my art is digital.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, no, it's so you would have very little actual original art then.
Yeah, the first 20 or 25 Little Formers, I drew them in pencil on paper, and then I inked them and colored them on the computer. So I have some of the old stuff, but yeah, after that I just went all digital.
That's awesome. Well, Jeremy, what else do you have?
Well, maybe like, as you mentioned, this is a unique situation for the comics industry. It's starting to get back on its feet. How has it really affected Udon? I mean, I guess you said they only do a few comic series.
Well, we don't do a ton of, like, we don't have a monthly comic all the time. We're not going to have comics all the time. We do mini series here and there. But even though we don't do monthly comics, Diamond Distributors is our exclusive distributor for not just comic stores, but for bookstores, Amazon, International, all this stuff. So we're affected by the shutdown just like everybody else. Luckily, we are, because we only have a few releases a month rather than like 5 or 6 a week. We're actually, when this started, we were actually in the middle of like a 6-week break. We don't usually have that big of a break, but we just happened to have one where we didn't have any new releases. So that one was closed for a whole 2 months. So we've definitely had some titles get delayed. We've also been affected by Diamond having to delay payments to all their vendors. I mean, it really sucks, but there wasn't really much else they could do because it's not just that they just decided not pay people. It's that, some comic shops are shut down and not paying their bills.
Yeah.
Some big, like, and it's not just little things, like big vendors, like there's a library distributor that wasn't paying their bills. Amazon decided, okay, we're not going to be buying any new books for at least a month.
Yeah, they were focusing on more health related stuff.
Yeah. And it was just because they just didn't have the manpower to handle all this stuff. So they had to decide what they were going to prioritize at Amazon. They're doing amazing sales of everything. Until we get a handle on this, we have to stop ordering some things. So yeah, I wouldn't say rough. It was like a scary couple months where we didn't know exactly where everything was going to end up, but Udon had some reserves, and Eric Co didn't have to lay off or furlough anybody.
That's good.
During the time. We started some new projects for direct sales. Like we created a Udon Capcom sketchbook that we took pre-orders for on our website, and that's actually going to start shipping in 2 weeks.
Nice.
Udon's come up with a bunch of new pins because we also have merchandising licenses with a bunch of different companies like Capcom and Atlas and Tatsunoko, all kinds of guys. So while we were like kind of delayed in book releases, we came up with all these new projects, and so those are going ahead, and now the old projects are back on track. So there's a lot of stuff happening at one time.
It's a great place to be in, I guess, but it's weird because the whole thing just kind of exposed all of the faults in the comic publishing system from the local stores all the way up. So it's great that you guys are able to weather the storm.
Yeah, so we'll see where the industry will be in a few months. I mean, definitely there will be stores that close permanently. Yeah. There will be publishers that close permanently or shut down and have to sell their assets or something. But hopefully everyone who gets through it will be stronger because of it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the big problems before the industry was just there's too much stuff. There's too much stuff on the shelf. So it could benefit from especially the big guys, like just scaling back a little bit.
Yeah, I saw Marvel just eliminate a whole wave of variant covers, like a whole theme.
Really?
I think there were Venom related variant covers. I'm like, the big two especially get a little crazy with the variants.
Well, DC was, even before this, they had publicly said, like, we're going to be scaling back our number of titles. Should be great. I mean, imagine if say Marvel was just publishing, say, 20 comics a month. I mean, you could buy the whole Marvel universe for like $100 in a month.
Yeah.
Maybe you would, like right now you pick and choose. Maybe if you could get everything, you'd buy everything just to keep up with it.
Yeah. But, I mean, do you need like 5 Spider-Man titles? I don't know if there is 5, but
if it was me, I don't know, Marvel, I would just take every comic series that has had a movie in the last 10, 15 years, they get a comic, and then 5 more just to experiment with, and then just see where it goes from there.
It's true. I got a question for you because there's IDW's been in the news quite a lot lately because of their financial situation. Now, you've gone through this with Dreamwave, with them having a bit of a financial situation. I think most people that will listen to this podcast know what it is. But if the worst possible thing happens and IDW has to close, what would you think happens to their licenses? Would Udon take a run at one of their licenses?
Well, it's tough to say. People have asked me, and I said, well, we got to see where the comic market settles. Comics was tough enough to begin with.
Yeah.
But because for us, it's the most expensive thing we do for the least return. But we still do it because we love making comics. And it keeps our relationship with Capcom nice if we're helping expand their brand a little bit, doing new stuff. But I mean, I'd love to do something. I'd love to, if Udon could do a Transformers comic or like a Sonic the Hedgehog comic, or, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. So I'd imagine, I mean, I guess everything would not everything IDW does, but slowly different people would pick things up. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's weird to compare the two because they're different situations. IDW seems much worse, but they're a much bigger company than Dreamwave ever was. So Dreamwave never had any significant debt. Like they never had any investors. It's just that Dreamwave didn't pay people, and at the end they owed people $2 million basically. A lot of it was to Hasbro for royalties. They owed a lot of rent. They owed a lot of individual creators. But IDW has huge investors, so they've been able to operate at a loss for a few years because they had the huge investors up front. But that's not going to last forever, right? I mean, so if you think, so Dreamwave owed people $2 million, and that was basically two bad years. They accumulated $2 million of debt. IDW the last 2 years has had, I think, a combined $60 million in losses, like 60 million. Yeah. So I don't know how you come back from that. And I don't know how much of investment they had at the beginning. Maybe that's public knowledge. I'm not sure what those figures are. I don't know. But man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but IDW is also publicly traded.
Yeah. So a lot of their information is public. I mean, I know if I understand it, they said they're depending a lot on their TV shows, two of the three of which are canceled now. So,
but I don't know what's going to happen. They have one hit on Netflix, Lock and Key.
So I mean, it could be, like I said, it could be they just shut down and then the licenses go to other companies, or it could be maybe their publishing division is sold to somebody else, and it continues to kind of exist all together as one thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot that could happen, or maybe they've got some brilliant ideas and they come back stronger. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I guess all we can do is wait. But no, you're right. It's a different situation completely. But the end result is we want to be able to see comics. Yeah. Transformers comics specifically for our show, but we want to see a company making Transformers comics that get out to the market, because that's how people experience the stories, right?
I just want, whoever it's from, if I want a Transformers comic, I want the good Autobots to fight the evil Decepticons for control of Cybertron or control of energy. That's about it.
You don't want Autobot Megatron? Like I have behind you?
No, I don't. It doesn't compute in my head. It's like, I don't understand. Doesn't make sense. Is it unless it was part of a really long game that he was playing, maybe, but otherwise, to get in something, or this is how I'm gonna get the Matrix. This is how I'm gonna awaken Unicron, something, but. Otherwise, it just does not compute for me.
It felt like a satisfying thing to me, but I understand a lot of the people that just didn't understand it. But
I was okay with Autobahn Megatron, but basically that was my tipping point. It was good, and then everything just kind of fell off after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I guess I have one last industry question.
Sure.
What? I mean, it seems like everything now. I mean, we have the digital comics are growing and growing in popularity, especially because of the shutdown. Like DC and Marvel in particular did a bunch of digital first to just get stuff out there. But it seems to us that the big issue preventing kind of an explosion of digital comics is the price match between physical and digital, when it obviously costs a lot less to produce a digital book. Where do you ever see that changing in the future? Like where digital books would end up being cheaper?
Well, if you want to know how much it actually costs less, it's probably something, but depending on the print run, it's between like a book that Marvel printed like 100,000 copies of probably costs them like 10 cents a comic.
Okay.
But a book that's like 10,000 might cost like 30 cents or 40 cents. But so it is significant when you're only getting maybe if a comic's $4, the publisher's getting like $1.60,
right?
Is what they're actually getting out of it. So, it's different amount of significance depending on how money you're printing, but it's not a ton of savings. But at the same time, you're making a ton of extra money if you're selling it at full price, because you're not giving retailers their cut, and you're not giving Diamond their cut. So, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense that they cost the same, because there isn't the same amount of stuff put into it. But like it's always functioned in the book industry that way. I think they're usually the same price at the beginning, and then they go down in price. But yeah, in comics, it's mainly to not kill comic shops. I would say. But
I think
at the same time, digital didn't take off as crazy as people thought it would. I think most publishers do like Udon, where we release it at full price, and then after 6 months bring it down to like half price.
Yeah, and I think back
less.
issues usually settle around like 99 cents or so. But
yeah, there's a lot of stuff that the industry does still do to try to somewhat to take care of comic shops. Like comic shops get a lot of things, depending on the publisher, they might still get a lot of books 2 weeks earlier than other places. And that's a historical thing, because when you're talking about comic books back in the day, comic shops would get, say, an issue of Spider-Man 2 weeks earlier than a newsstand got an issue of Spider-Man. And the trade-off for that was that the comic shop version was not returnable, but if the newsstand didn't sell theirs, they could just rip off the covers, mail them back, and they'd get their money back. So that was like kind of a fair and balanced thing. But now we're so many years later, and there's really no newsstand anymore.
Right.
And comic shops are still stuck in this non-returnable relationship. So
I know that my store in London here gets them sometimes as early as Monday, but usually it's Tuesday they get them, and then they're available on Wednesday. So if it's a good, well-flowing week, they'll get them on Monday, but that's a rarity. So
it used to be that they got them Wednesday morning, and then they worked really, Diamond and I guess all the shops, they just worked really hard to come up with a system that they could get them on Tuesdays and then release them on Wednesday, because that helps them so much that they can set them up on Tuesday night. So now that DC's letting people sell stuff on Tuesdays, since they're using alternate distributors, it's getting very complicated and messy. So I don't know what's going to happen. Like, is somebody going to say, well, we're going to release our comics on Mondays, and we're going to release ours on Fridays? It's just going to go back and back till you get back to Wednesdays again. I don't know.
I asked my shop, and they said they're sticking with just Wednesdays, and they're not going with new distributors.
Yeah. Well, someone else, I forget what podcast I was listening to, but someone was saying like, well, people are going to come, even if you do release the DC comics on Tuesdays, people are like comic fans know how this works, and they know that, if I come in for an issue of Batman, that you have an issue of Spider-Man behind the cover. sorry, behind the counter that you could give me right now, but you're not.
Mhm.
So either give it to me now and I'll buy it, or maybe I won't come back tomorrow. So like,
or you don't want to have people wanting to come, multiple days a week.
yeah,
They'll just come once a week regardless. And
I think for the most part, people will just come on Wednesdays. But yeah, there could, comic shops know that there could be some lost sales because some people want to get it right away and they're just not going to come back, and they'll just say, I'll just get it next week, and then they don't get that impulse buy. They just decide to not get it next week. So, I don't know.
Well,
I think one of the reasons DC said they wanted to be Tuesdays is because Book Market releases things on Tuesdays.
yeah,
Not floppy comics, but trade paperbacks and books and things. So that's why they said they're trying to align things. But
I think movies and music are also on Tuesdays.
Oh, okay.
I remember that. Yep.
Well, Daryl, you want to run through the rapid fire?
Oh, sure. Shit, I gotta find that.
Yeah. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I like getting kind of some more concrete answers about the industry stuff that we just kind of speculate on, and I'm happy to know we're right about 50% of the time.
You have more, write them down, and you have me on again another time.
Mhm.
I just found, I found this interesting. I'm looking through, I don't know if are you guys using the video? I know you're recording video, but
well, I'm recording it. Yeah. So you can show it.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about it, but I found do you remember the War Within, the first War Within series?
Yeah.
Yep.
So the first War Within there was a preview issue called Dreamwave Preview Special that had like 6 different comic series previewed in here that were coming up. One of them was War Within. It has a 4-page War Within preview, but it's not a preview of issue number 1. It's a preview of War Within preview. So there's a War Within preview issue that has, I think, about 10 pages of story. So the Dreamwave preview had 4 pages of the War Within 10-page preview, which it's an original story. It's not in issue number 1. But then there's a preview of the preview and then issue number 1.
You don't want to let anything slip.
No
spoilers.
That's great. Okay, so let's run into rapid fire here. This is something that we do with all of our guests here, and it's just something to kind of, close out the interview. So, Matt, Autobot or Decepticon?
Decepticons.
Who is your favorite Decepticon?
Shockwave.
All right. Transformers live action movie 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or Bumblebee?
The first 10 minutes of Bumblebee.
Okay. More Than Meets the Eye or Lost Light, RID or Optimus Prime, Till All Are One, or the new ongoing Transformers series?
Haven't read any of them.
All right.
I'm sorry. Whatever one Alex Milne draws.
Okay.
Hey, Alex.
He did draw More Than Meets the Eye.
There you
go. Third-party toys, yes or no?
They're cool, but I don't have any. I only have the Volcanicus upgrade kit.
Okay, well, that's a third-party add-on. I'll take that.
Sure.
Cats or dogs?
Cats for me.
Coffee or tea?
I don't drink either of them.
All right. Chicken or steak?
Oh, chicken, probably.
Pepsi or Coke?
Coke, which I say even though I have a Pepsi right here. But
Burger King or McDonald's?
Oh, McDonald's is where I'll usually go. But the Burger King stackers are awesome.
History or science?
Science.
Xbox, PlayStation, or Switch?
Switch. Switch is amazing.
PC or Mac?
PC.
iPhone or Android?
I have an iPhone, so I've got 2 different answers there.
That's what I do.
Which phone app can you not live without?
Oh. I've got one that I call Track My Wife, but it's really just like a find your friends. It's so that I can time. I don't use it now, but it's so that I can time dinner so that I know when she's exactly going to get home.
I do the same thing with my wife. Used the Find My thing on iOS, just so like I'll know when she's leaving work or whatever.
Yeah, because I work at home and she works, in regular time. She works in an office, so that's a great app for like, oh, dinner's ready right on time, or like I know I don't have to start yet because she's a little behind or something.
Oh boy, Marvel or DC?
My whole life I'm a Marvel person, but there's great stuff at both.
All right,
both
who
universes.
is your favorite Marvel character then?
Oh, I'll just go for an obscure one I really like. This is Maverick from X-Men.
Okay,
He's awesome.
That is obscure.
He has the weird power to see into the immediate future of his enemies and take appropriate action.
Stallone or Schwarzenegger?
Oh, I think Stallone. I like Demolition Man.
Pixar or DreamWorks?
Oh man, that's such a sad question now. I used to be such a Pixar, like everything Pixar can do is great, and it's just changed. Like DreamWorks does some good stuff now. Overall Pixar. Full catalog Pixar, but nowadays DreamWorks.
Do you have a guilty pleasure movie that you'll always watch if you run across it on TV?
Probably. Let's see.
Like you're just flipping through and
you're just like, holy shit, this is on, and you sit down and watch it.
Well, I love Snatch by Guy Ritchie.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I know a lot of people say Lock, Stock is better movie, but I saw Snatch first. They're almost the same movie kind of a thing, just how they're structured and how they operate. So I saw Snatch first, so I like that one better.
Brad Pitt in that movie. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
I'm a Star Trek person, but I love Star Wars too. Not a big fan of either of them right now. But Star Trek is like probably my favorite thing.
All right. You watch the Orville?
I love the Orville. The Orville's amazing. It's just Star Trek.
Yes, it is. It's the
like, best
Star Trek right now.
It's like how so the Star Trek movies, how they alternate good bad. As long as you put Galaxy Quest in when it came out, then they alternate. Yep. So yeah, Orville is the great Star Trek series right now.
Yeah.
There's also some other things happening that are called Star Trek.
The Simpsons, Family Guy, or Rick and Morty?
Well, I love The Simpsons. Simpsons is one of my favorite things. Which is, I just had my birthday, and I just became older than Homer, even though I was younger than Bart when Simpsons started.
Oh man,
it's a series that will never end. Well,
yeah,
I'm sure it's about to,
but Rick and Morty's great. Family Guy has some really good moments, but is very uneven.
Walking Dead or Game of Thrones?
Walking Dead. I don't get Game of Thrones.
All right. NFL, MLB, NHL, UFC, or NBA?
NHL. Not a huge sports guy, but I have to pick NHL.
Yeah, it's Canadian.
Yeah.
Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini, or Volkswagen Beetle?
Lamborghini Countach for the Lambo brothers.
And lastly, blonde, brunette, or redhead?
Oh, my wife is a brunette, so that's the best.
That's the answer to that question. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well done. That's the gauntlet.
Cool.
Well,
phew.
I guess one other question we have, it's not part of the rapid fire, but are you open for commissions? Since basically every convention is not happening right now.
Yeah, I've done a few lately. If you have like a blank sketch cover, most people I've been telling them, you mail it to me and I'll mail it to you, and I won't charge you any shipping. Otherwise I'll just charge you for the sketch. And if you want a sketch on paper, I do 8x10 artboards is what my sketch size is usually. It's easy to frame. Or I could do something bigger if you really want. But yeah, I'm totally open. Just contact me. Go to lilformers.com, and there's like a contact form to contact me, or just hit me up on Twitter at lilformers. I did. I think it was a friend of Daryl's. I did a connecting Silver Surfer and 90s Green Lantern Kyle Rayner. He didn't ask for that, but I just made them connect anyway.
And they had that crossover series.
Yeah, they had a crossover, and they fought each other. This specific Green Lantern fought Silver Surfer in the Marvel DC, Marvel versus DC.
Cool. Yeah, no, he his name's Rob, and he asked me, he's like, who's an artist I can get? I'm like getting itchy for some sketch covers, and I'm like, well, I rattled off a couple names, and I said Matt's great, and he does this chibi style, and you'll probably really love it. And I showed him some examples that you had done for me, and I said, here, hit him up on Twitter. He's really accessible, and he's as opposed to all these other artists, he's local basically. He's he's just in Toronto, so you hit him up, and he's like, yeah, man. And before I knew it, he'd already sent the covers off to you, and he's like, yeah, he's doing them up. Like, all right, cool. So yeah,
cool. Yeah, it was fun. I mean, Silver Surfer, I wanted to do nice backgrounds and everything because Silver Surfer's he's just like white. So there's not much color to put on. I just put on some light blue highlights and stuff. So I felt like I needed to do some nice backgrounds. There's actually one guy, I forget his name, but he comes. So I have a commission rate for a black and white or a color, and it's basically the same process where I just draw the lines, and if you want color, I fill it in. But it's cheaper to get the black and white without color. But there's one guy who comes every show. I'm like, what do you want? I want a black and white. Okay, who do you want? And he'll be like, I want Black Panther, or I want Venom. Or every time he comes up with like a new black and white character. So I try because he's so like clever. Every time I give him the black and white rate, but I try to do it a little extra nice for him because it's kind of smart.
Now you have a thing.
Right. That's awesome. Well, very good. All right. Thank you very much, Matt, for joining us tonight. And we will continue with doing these Dreamwave retrospectives as we have no Transformers comics to do. So we'll just keep looking back, and maybe we'll check in again with you as we get through to maybe some of the other series like War Within as we get to that. So, yeah.
Well, chronological and releases. Besides Armada, that's the next release is what actually was released. So,
really? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. War Within started before Volume 2. So,
I think we're on to Volume 2 next because Charles dictated it shall be so.
Okay.
Right on. Well, thank you very much again, and we will see you later.
Cool. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of Transmissions. But just because this episode is over doesn't mean the Transformers fun has to stop. Join us and other Transformers fans on our Discord chat server by visiting transmissionspodcast.com/discord. If you would like to learn more about how you could support the Transmissions Podcast, just visit transmissionspodcast.com/support. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again next week.